Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special installment of the Be Well reading series from ELJ Editions. I'm Nicole Tallman, your host for tonight, and we have an amazing celebration of horror poetry for you. I am so honored to have three tremendous poets with us tonight. We have Jessica Cuello, we have Adam Davis, and we have Dorothea Lasky, and they are going to be reading to us from their latest poetry books. And before we get started, I just want to give you a quick run of show. Each of the featured readers will read for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to save some time at the end for audience Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we will respond to them at the end. And I'm also going to put links to our poets' books in the chats. I really encourage you to support our poets and purchase their books if you're able to afford to do that. It really does make a big difference. And to get us started tonight, we have Jessica Cuello. And Jessica's most recent book is Yours Creature from Jack Leg Press. Her book Liar was selected by Dorian Lux for the 2020 Barrow Street Book Prize and was honored with the Eugene Nasser Prize, the CNY Book Award, and got a finalist nod from the Houstonic Book Award. And Jessica is also the author of Hunt and Pricking, and she has been awarded the 2022 Nina Riggs Poetry Prize, 2 CNY Book Awards, the 2016 Washington Prize, the New Letters Poetry Prize, a Saltonstall Fellowship, and the new Ohio Review Poetry Prize. And she's the poetry editor at Tahoma Literary Review, and she teaches French at CNY. Let's give a warm welcome to Jessica Cuello.
Thank you so much for having me. I was thrilled to be invited to read with Adam. I didn't realize Dorothea went by Dottie, so I learned that tonight. And my last name is actually Cuello, and I didn't know that until I fell in love with my husband at 17, but it's like neck in Spanish. And I'm going to read tonight from Yours Creature, which is my most monstery book. And it's a series of epistolary poems in the voice of Mary Shelley, writing to her creature, her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, the feminist and activist, and sometimes to months and years. Dear Mother, I wanted to crawl back into the black interior of you, womb scratched by an animal, but they wouldn't let me. I hung apart like gallows men, dangling for sweet touch. A line from the red radius of your womb went dark. That night, the whole of London raised its eyes to watch the comet pass, except for us. Instead, my currish cry and snarl, my cuss, my cut and run, my cutting tooth, made death a custom house. Your daughter, Mary Shelley. Her birth killed Mary Wollstonecraft, her mother, after a week and a half. Dear Mother, I am threatened with a return of my girlish troubles, my arm covered red with scabs, my hand a floor at the abattoir. At night, the animal cry is the clock strike hour of sour milk. At noon, the swinging pig is ankles tied. In the 3 stories of the Skinner house, my stepmother is not you. Her latch on me is fixed, and I learn to regard myself with her repulsion, fixed to the mold in her domestic eye. My skin is a revolt. How can it not cry animal when she pulls my hair and knocks me down? With longing for your presence, Mary Shelley. And I picked a couple I never read because I thought they'd fit the theme more. So they're like my more gruesome ones I don't like to read because I'm actually terrified of horror movies, but I love it. So, Dear Mother, labor, labor, little need fire. You made a nursedom for a speck of love. You wrote a ream of neck verse to stem your father's voice raging through the walls. He hanged your dog. Mother meant penance by the fire 9 silent hours. A secret is a sliver inside. For you, love was mania and compulsion, a nunnish fever at your friend's bedside. She died in childbirth, the baby too. This is my frantic voice, the mind's scratch, scratch that sits fireside with you. I kiss your imagined hand. Mary Shelley. Dear mother, until I have a father, P can be my father, half a father, door-turned father, father of the residence, father broke and broken, father borrowing from the child, father drubbing, father pages, father lies. After the baby died, P befriended my stepsister. He made a come and go, an avoidance of my grief bucket, turned his back on the careless coma doctor. He was a man of many parts, made from the legs of me, the chest of her, dissected red and covered with a poultice. I'm sewn from gut to brain with scraps of men. Taffy, Mary. This one has a line from one of Wollstonecraft's letters. Dear mother, you wrote that you could not avoid the eye. A person has a right to tell, and I could tell a tale by night. I wrote beside the tossed gray water, and where the dark red rags were soaked. I told by yeast and flour, made a man, made a monster, put it on the Chamonix. I told a tale by ice and organ, made a parcel of desire. After the mountain and dead baby, P offered up his friend to love. I tried to conjure some desire for him. A person has a right to tell, a right to I. You wrote this when Imlay left you, before you met my father. But I have met my only love, and I am done with I, your daughter as ever, Mary. Dear Sweden, 1795. She wrote that an enlarged mind is no use, and muttered over her dead friend. She could not mutter over me unborn, a fire not yet in her eye. She still gazed toward the bridge's ledge. She didn't know I would do it for her, be her little murderer. My own afterbirths came out like floors of flesh, pink animals the child and I needed together. Hers stayed inside the first room of death. They put me in a stranger's arms. But back when they pulled her from the river where she tried to drown, the room I would occupy in her was warm. Yours in London, 1820. M.S., daughter of M. Wollstonecraft. Dear mother, I had a dream that my little baby came to life again. What is it to make a life that dies? Like God, it cannot stand to stay. Cabbage leaves are soft, like cloth and smell of tea. I wore them on my breast like medicine. The earthy taste of tea made me hate my flesh. I didn't know if I was made of anything else. Her 13 days were the only time, and they had no measure. Clouds swirled like bands of twisted cloth. I'm sorry to burden you. As a child, I was spooked by the empty hall when father moved us in. At first, he loved me like I was you, and in the dream, we rubbed it by the fire and it lived. Yours, as ever, Mary. Every time I mention P, that's Percy Shelley. He's just an initial. Dear creature, the sea of ice was my favorite distraction. We kept a squirrel inside a box who bit me. P carried him for a while, the way he carried kindness, useless and external like a man. At night, when we read Christabel, P thought my nipples were eyes. He ran away afraid. I suppose each hole of my body is an eye, especially my mouth, repulsed by the heat of its need. Your monstrous creator, M.S. Just two more. Dear creature, P and I read each other's writings, and I am relieved a little of desire. The child said, some beings don't live long, pointing to the dragonfly. In my womb, the child moved beneath the skin and lifted the surface in the shape of an arm. I thought how the other children's arms were tucked in and never seen, an arm against a sack of blue. Once the hardness of my mind dropped to the womb. Creature, you opened each brain window, a god that jumped from ear to ear. Sometimes I listened for you when I touched P. You came with his voice. His hand could draw you. Your creator, M.S. Dear creature, I alternate between book and milk, pure air and burning sun. We took in a girl called Polly Rose. She kept my flowered plate. It's 9 months to make a life. Then you feed and rock their little forms. You worry them into morning, then worry them into night. At Bishopsgate, they carried out the coffers and the chairs. Money is an extra skin that keeps some safe. I tell my boy to stay away from damaged people. Polly's feet pass our bedroom door. She is the neighbor's girl they couldn't feed. P brought her home. He gave away his shoes. Every woman is damage and witness strung invisibly from baby to man. Your creator, M.S. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
That was so amazing, Jessica. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry I butchered your last name. I'm usually better about that. So please forgive me.
It's cool. I just thought I would say.
Well, I'm glad you told me because now I know. So thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that.
It's a confusing one.
Well, you'd think living in Miami, I would have gotten that double L as the Y sound, but who knows? I don't know where my brain is today, but thank you so much for that beautiful reading. So next, we are going to go to Adam. Adam O. Davis is the author of Index of Haunted Houses from Saraband, winner of the Catherine A. Morton Poetry Prize, the recipient of the 2022 Poetry International Prize, and a 2016 George, is it Bogan? Am I saying that right? Okay.
Yep, Bogan, yep.
From the Poetry Society of America. Adam has received grants and fellowships from the Bishop School, Columbia University, the New Literary Project, the Prague Summer Program for Writers, and the Vermont Studio Center. Adam is co-creator and host of the podcast, Poetry Goes to the Movies with Colin Waters. And he lives in San Diego, where he teaches English, literature, and composition at the Bishop School. Let's give a warm round of applause for Adam O. Davis.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you everyone for being here. It's a real pleasure. Thank you first for inviting me and thinking of the book, and also just such an honor to be reading with Jessica and Dottie. It's delightful. I'm in Tucson right now, actually, so it's currently about 82 degrees, and it's also Dia de los Muertos, so there's still a lot of spirits kind of flying around the air out here, and hopefully we can bring some to you. I'm going to read a couple poems from the book that deal with ghosts. Why not? Let's try that out. This first one's called Manifest Destiny. This house will outlast me and all those ghosts I know. I know there is always a ghost idling on the edge of what I hold dear. I never know when I should confront the ghost or how to walk so that the ghost leaves before I have to. Please tell me how to smile, knowing how terrible the stars are for never changing and for not knowing how. Terrible, how terrible, please tell me, are the stars. Meteorology index. Between absinthe and Corinthians, between linoleum and Lamanites, ghosts. What else? Ghosts and more ghosts. Ghosts who haunt the salt shaker and sugar bowl, who howl like pesos as you pass. Ghosts who speak of skulls in careful English, who smoke cigarettes indoors, whose heads are titled by a toxic lack of locks. Ghosts who write love letters to ghosts, who linger light as book-pressed butterflies upon the lips of the living, who taste of lie and lollipop alike, who always stand behind you like a lightning-crippled tree. This next poem, it goes all the way to 10 because that's as high as I can count. I'm functionally illiterate in math. That's why I teach English. So it's called Spirit Arithmetic. 1 nick, 2 nickels, 3 licorice twists before bedtime, 4 hours of a leaky faucet, 5 times now, 6 spoons I swallow, 7 scratches upon the sun, 8 elms invisible to the eye, 9 knots in a blonde braid, 10 attics in this house. In this one we store strangers. I had a fairly peripatetic youth growing up, and so I spent a lot of time in motels and hotels, and one of the things that always haunted me was whenever I'd roll over and find a bedside table, you'd open up that drawer and there'd be a copy of the Bible in there, placed there by the Gideons themselves. And I always thought, what a haunting thing. There's this whole army of people out there just delivering Bibles to the bedside tables of America. What a thankless job. So this is called Ghost of Motel 6, and it's for all those Gideons out there. If this boy you inhabit is a hotel, its neon needles the alphabet lightly. Bibles loam unopened in the boredom of bedside tables, patient little loaves of leather, black in their theaters of compressed sleep. In each room of each lung, silence swells like a syndicate of ants. A ghost unfurls like a flower from the television. The bathroom window broken, the wind asking questions, asking you to come outside, to see what it has against you. Try called Ghost of Polaroid. There's a series of poems throughout the book that deal with obviously the defunct industries, defunct places. Much of the book was influenced by the subprime mortgage crisis. I went to undergrad in Riverside, California, which is the epicenter of the mortgage crisis. And so you had the literal idea of haunted houses becoming a reality right in front of you with all these tract neighborhoods just going abandoned overnight. It's called Ghost of Polaroid. Winter is a gaunt gimlet, insomniac in sand, its new gift blue and skeletal, thrumming that plague of clock watchers, that lazy bones of morning commutes. Even so, everyone applauds that green sun shyly at the horizon. For who can ignore the Jesus bug crossing the pond, and who hides in clouded soil, sinking to lazier bones? No one is sick, nowhere, no sickness. No one feels sick. I'm gonna read a new poem, if you don't mind here, and only because to Jessica's earlier point, I don't have a lot of maybe strict horror poems in this way, and this one actually was somewhat inspired by Friday the 13th, that undying film series. So I figure I got to share it here. It's called Hysteric Stereo. Sparrows go lashed to the invisible vehicle of the wind that wills their wandering as they flicker over fleets of dun Chevy Novas, Ford Escorts, whole artilleries of noble Tauruses and Tiburons, Santa Fe's and Tucsons, whose engines all powder our sunsets purple, who put the heat in the heartbeat of America and mistake Genesis for Omega. Or so it seems at 11 o'clock in the morning when the elms sit oiled in their lawns, as I consider the redistricted map of my life, wondering if the future will be magnificent or misappropriated, like a Mecca visited by Jason Voorhees, he of the machete and hockey mask, who championed sport over disfigurement, who condemned youth for youth's sake, and was in this sense a son, a storyteller, a serial killer, a thing that will not die in my lifetime or yours. By noon, my potato sings a shrill opus in the microwave. What would Ovid make of it? Some carb-heavy banshee begging the mythic hero to remember its superheated sacrifice, the whistle of a water nymph as she boils into oblivion. As I eat whatever myth may have been, I remind myself that deserts were once gardens, oceans ice fields, and what I am only for what is no more. Everything must die in miniature before it is transformed. I'll read one more poem here. Poem, that sounds very fancy. I'll read one more poem. It's one of the longer ones in the book. It's called Stetson in Retrograde, and it takes its epigraph from a court decision that occurred back in New Jersey back in the early 90s. And there was a gentleman in New Jersey who bought a house in New Jersey, and upon buying it, he was informed that the house was considered to be haunted. Now, he did not believe in the paranormal or supernatural, but like any red-blooded American, he believed in a resale value, and he felt this was going to harm his chances of getting his money back. So he took the realtor and the former owners to court for a rescission, and he actually won. And it's the first time in at least the US legal system, that ghosts were given agency and effectively believed to be real. And if you want to read this court ruling, it's actually a lot of fun. There are a lot of fun, spooky double entendres in there, references to Hamlet's ghost and Amityville Horror and Ghostbusters and everything like that. This is in 6 parts. Stetson Retrograde. As a matter of law, the house is haunted. Stambovsky versus Ackley, 1991. 1. If a house is haunted like a radio is haunted, if a body is a radio of blood, if a body of ghosts hums like blood over a valley of bone, if blood is a government of ghosts, if bones grow green as cash in the foreign national of our ghosts, if homes bloom along the interstate of our blood, if from granaries of bone we rise in the newspaper dawn, if amongst the chattering of water we rise like a benediction over the auspices of convenience, if ghosts we rise like ghosts, if we collect like desire in a desert payphone, if we ring like coins in the cup of night, if we lie like coins in the palm of Nebraska, if the sun is an argument with ghosts, if the sun's argument plays out in squares upon the floor of this home, if the day winds down like a watch, if heaven is a horology, if desire is the body we give the past, if at night termites tick like time in our bones, if in these bones we find the body's foreclosure. 2. If in the foreclosure we find the math of our homes. If the math of our homes is the math of fire, if the math of fire is the math of money, if the math of money is a map of interstate rain. If grief is a cup, let me drink from it and be drunk. If drunk and wandering, if thirsty and moneyed, if coined and fashionable, if drunk and wandering like a dog through the supermarkets of the night. If I want the question of a home, if I want as a windmill wants the wind, if I want that lesson, if I want the lesson that breaks me, if I want the desert and its wind, if I want to throw myself to it, if I want never to be seen again. If by the light of dentistry my teeth anoint ledgers lavish with loss, if in these ledgers every tooth is a house, if debt is a tooth the dentist will not pull. 3. If awake, if waking, if awake in the wake of sleep, if sore-eyed and stubbled, if poorly fed yet feed, if coffeed and quiet, if humming, if awake and humming in the halls of convenience, if aching under the auspice of birds whose voices are feathered and vaulted and keyed. If of our voices we build a bank, will it not speak? If we atone, if we in our homes atone, if we sink alone into the chloroform fiduciary of home, if we pill and drone, if we alone are alone, if we tether ourselves to the stones of our homes, if we sink to lazier bones, if we believe bankruptcy is a throne, if along the rails the whistle no longer blows. 4. If we choose, if we had chosen, if we better, if we had been better and awake, if we had accounted, if we had awakened from the tax of sleep to the muted bells of bills that rang like fire in the foundries of past lovers, if lovers and we sleep, if like fire we build the forest for overages, if for a surcharge we survive the past, if of the past we make a ministry of the past, if we pass like fire over the waters of ambition, if upon those waters we find our faces and weep, if weeping stops, if stopping stops, if the ghost math of money stops, if named, if a name is cast like a coin over the auspices of convenience, if I call a name, will that name call back? If I call, will I call collect? If I collect like credit, if I credit a ghost. 5. If named for a ghost, if in the name of all ghosts, if the name is named that calls all ghosts to waking, if waking ghosts. If ghosts rise like desire from the granaries of sleep and dress for the newspapered dawn, if newspapered and awake, if hunted by convenience stores, if alone and named, if nameless and unknown, if anonymous as light, if mute as tax, if a dividend of sun sits like a lone upon the floor of this home, if silence is alone, if the sun is a school, if ghosts are a lesson drawn in sand, if the sun looms like a school of blood over subdivisions of ghosts, if subdivided, if the desert like a house of belief is a body dividended with blood. 6. If belief is a ghost, if blood is weather, if bones are birds in a body of fog, if debt is a body clothed with birds, if the body is a myth in the municipal pool, if birds gather like fists of cash on federal clotheslines, if ghosts tremble on foreign buildings like cups of fog, if cash is the myth in the myth of collection, if myth is a lesson in collective loss, if we are learned and lean, if we are lessoned by learning, if learning is a lean-to loss, if a ghost is a home, if a ghost is a thing bankrupt of bone, if land is land only, if it is lessoned in homes, if we like land grow green with a memory of our blood, if we grow and with land, if we be, if land is, if we be and with land, never let us be without, if never without us, our ghosts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's such a delight to hear you read those poems. I'm such a fan of your work, so thank you again for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have Dorothea Lasky, who is the author of 7 books of poetry and prose, including her latest, The Shining, out from Wave Books. I'm going to drop a link into the chat, and her publisher was kind enough to provide a discount code too. So I'm going to put that in there too. If you want to pick up a copy, you can get a little discount for participating with us tonight. And she currently teaches poetry at Columbia University School of the Arts. Let's give a warm welcome to Dorothea Lasky.
Hi, everyone. Nicole, it's so wonderful to meet you after all these years. And yeah, just to see, I know we already, met each other, but see face to face, as Zoom face to Zoom face. And yeah, thank you so much for putting this night together. It's so fabulous and so great to be with all of you. And thank you, Jessica and Adam, for such wonderful readings. And it's such a delight to celebrate horror poetry, which I guess is we're making a thing. Or you already made a thing. It's a thing now. I mean, we've established its thingness. So anyway, so it's so wonderful. And just in the spirit of Adam and Jessica's reading, they were talking about kind of reading, older poems or poems like, about horror, or the Freddie was mentioned. I was gonna just read poems from The Shining, but I thought I'd read an old poem to Freddie, just to keep him, in our consciousness. And so yeah, if there's any Freddie fans, and then we'll move on to The Shining. But and so this poem is called Me and You, and it's from a book called Milk.
You know that scene in an old Freddy movie where there's that junkie? She's kind of a punk and seems tough, but with that mere surface level punk vulnerability. She's wearing all silver and black. They are in an alley. She says, "Fuck you, Freddy," and brandishes a knife. He looks at her alarmed, then lifts his arms. "Wanna get high," he says, each finger a syringe filled with bright blue. On her arms, little pockets and mouths, open, beckoning. What does he do? He falls forward with intent, and she knows what she's in for. "Who is that?" "That's me and you." "Who is that?" "That's me and you." So just some Freddie love, one of my first horror loves. And yeah, and so I thought I'd read some poems from The Shining, which is kind of, I have so much love for The Shining. And but this book that I wrote is a bit of a love letter to Wendy in The Shining, because she's such an amazing character. And of course in the film, Shelley Duvall does such a fantastic performance, and she's so amazing too. So but I'll just read a couple poems from this new book. And the first one is called Self-Portrait in the Hotel. I am here by myself and I have finished everything. There are no pretensions, no way around the door. I have eaten all the cans of beans and lemons and am face drunk on the floor. There are no cats here, only children crawling around above me. Yes, they look at me. They absolutely do not know me. They want to look at me and tell me they know. They are fed and ready for the ceremony. I haven't prepared anything. I am so wholly unprepared for this. I was told I'd have a lifetime. Now the whole thing is coming at me. I can't even see myself in the mirror or in the space between the mirror and the wall. He brings me to the gray fixtures and mentions that we are dead. Who didn't know that when I checked into this God-forsaken hellhole? They locked me in the tiny yellow room with no belongings but my lipstick and said I'd be okay as long as I didn't make a movement. In and out he entered me, letting me know what I could or could not say. I wasn't saying anything. I never wanted to say a thing. I only wanted to see myself as vast and unknowable in some horrific ocean. Instead, they drove me for hours and up on the lands I wandered, red boots and a dark brown coat. I collected aqua pencils, 4 of them. They said it's your job now to tell this story, but I was no storyteller. I was an action figure that had no set box. I was tied up inside the cardboard. A little person took me down and drooled all over me. I was not a seer at all, and they knew it. I was only her and will be forever. And when you see her empty eyes, that's me, except my eyes are gleaming. And when there are tears, I will cry them, only for the days that have left me. They drove me here and locked me in a tiny yellow room. They said to be quiet, but I am not able to be quiet any longer. And yeah, so when you write a book called The Shining, there's certain kind of images you gotta definitely address or hit. So there was like a lot of pressure. There's so much, yeah, imagery, and one of those things is the idea of red rum. And that I won't give it away. I guess it'd be a big spoiler alert, but I had to write a red rum poem just to, connect to The Shining. So this poem is called Red Rum. Lipstick is one of the very finest elixirs. It has a soft consistency and can write on glass. Red rum is sweet and candied with cherries from the bottom of the bottle. We sip it so gracefully. I am in love again. His name is something, but who can remember? Memory is a lake and all of that. I can't remember where I left my last exercise. I was only ever sitting here watching the neon burn out. I have taken my red lipstick and written help across my chest. He looks at it so kindly. I know I am real again. I can feel the sweet bitters of the drink make me into a woman. I am not crying. I am writing sonnets in my mind about all of the vacations we will take after this one. I throw the glass against the wall. The only thing that matters in love is passion. And another image when you write a book called The Shining that you have to address is, the maze is like one of those iconic images. So I made sure I had at least, 2 or 3 maze poems in this book. So I'll just read one of them that hopefully is a little bit more uplifting than the other. So, and it's called The Green Maze. All the artists of the world are my brothers and sisters, even as I am locked in this house of the high ceilings and slanted bookcases, with all of the charlatans and naysayers, the soupy packagers and droopy preachers pushing me down a ditch or through the open window to an indefinable snow hill where I will surely not survive it. I still call on my family to know what's real or not. And whatever they say to you, chasing you down a hallway that will be forever estranged, be who you are. It is your job to carry it on, no matter what bull is chasing you. For 100 years with an axe in the green landscape of your dreams. Live your dreams and push through until it is daybreak and you see the sun, begging you to find the new space to go on. After all, it was and always will be your job to go free. So protect the things that are worth preserving. That's partially you too. Protect those upturned faces into the sun. No matter what, they must carry on. And I think I have time for like one more poem this poem is called Framed Pictures. And again, spoiler alert, but more imagery that it seems important in The Shining. But yeah, arguably maybe the creepiest moment of The Shining. So here we go for that, just to keep it on the creepy level for our horror poetry night. So Framed Pictures. At the very last moment, it is morning. Nothing is redemptive about it. There's a buffet breakfast somewhere that no one cares about. It's the next day, after hours of sex in the garden. We are walking across the golden walkway. A lion is running. He shouts that the green city is near, but something else propels us, not the stale brown liquid or rubbery proteins, but the overflowing sugar of memory that these objects hold. Across the golden path, 21 pictures wait for you. You will keep walking till you see the one you were destined for. People think this is all an accident. They think life could happen to anyone. When you see it, you will be drawn to the image of yourself in that forgotten year, his face being watered down by the elements for too many moments. He will be smiling at a party, and you will recognize what he's saying. The dead only speak through poetry, so make the poems be the things that you give everything. They must carry on. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's so great to be with everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole, for organizing it.
Thank you so much. I loved hearing those after I just finished reading this book again. It was amazing to hear those out loud. Thank you so much, Dottie. So I'm trying to see if we have any questions in the chat. This is the time if you have a question for one of our poets to ask. And if you don't have any questions, I always have a ton of questions because I'm super inquisitive. So, but I'm gonna let you all go first if you have any questions, and if not, I'll chime in. So if anyone has a question, you can either pop it in the chat or you can just raise your hand. I can read it out loud if you're shy and you don't want to talk. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And while we're waiting, do any of the featured poets have any other upcoming events that you want to tell the people who are here or the people who will be listening to the recording about? I know Dottie, you're on a book tour right now, aren't you?
Oh, I don't know that I would. Oh, sorry if I shouldn't have. Okay. Yeah, no, well, I don't know if it's exactly a tour,
Oh.
kind of a smattering of readings, like having fun, but I haven't been hardcore, touring or anything.
Oh, okay. Well, if there's anything anyone wants me to plug, just let me know. And Adam and Jessica, anything in particular you want us to know about that you're up to reading wise?
I mean, I'm in Tucson. I gave a reading last night, but I will be teaching a workshop tomorrow morning at the University of Arizona if anyone in here is in Tucson. So that's one thing there.
All right, Jessica? Oh, you're muted.
I'll be at the Cambridge Library in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But I teach public high school, so I also read and really book tour is like a reading, another reading, and then I don't do anything for a month, and then I do a reading. So, but this one's in person. So Boston.
Yeah, I mean, it can be really hard when we have other jobs to do things like tours. So I don't know how I always wondered how authors did that. I'm always jealous. How did you get to do a tour for your book? Because I have to go into my government office every day, and not that I don't love my job, because I do, but I'm just, to be able to do a tour, that's wow, that's just something different, I suppose. Dottie, you put oh yeah, you have a book of essays too. Dottie is like amazingly prolific here. Okay, so she's not messing around with books she edited. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a book that came out on Halloween, so it in a way fits our theme. But it's just, yeah, some amazing poets writing in the essay form, and just thinking about the idea of like the poet's essay. And yeah, so I thought maybe people might like it, or it's out from Essay Press, just out. And it's pumpkin orange. Again, I'm keeping with the themes of the night. So it's like it's very Halloweeny and horror-y. And anyway, well, but I mean, it's not, I don't want to mislead you. It's not like about horror, but there's beauty in the sublime. So that's okay, connected.
That's very cool. Definitely have to check that out. I'm looking at the list of people who are in the book too. You have Vicuna here, Cecilia Vicuna. Wasn't she the one who did this film, What's Poetry to You?
Yeah.
I love that movie. It's so like a short film, but it's amazing. It's all in Spanish, so if you don't speak Spanish, it can be a little bit difficult. Well, I think they have subtitles, but I was really moved by that. I was wondering if that was that's the same poet, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if something is online to link it for people.
So good.
If they're, I don't know if you can find it. You can watch it. Let me see. I'm gonna put a link. Okay, you guys, I don't know if this is the right link, but
Well, it might be, and that's A for effort.
Zoom teaching skills are a little rusty, but I'm not sure. This might be something people would love.
Very cool. So we have a question from, oh, hey, Jader, you were just at the lunchtime poetry and jazz event I hosted yesterday. I'm glad to see you here again. So you have a question for all three of our poets. Given the theme, do the words come to you, or is it a process to stay in character or theme? You want to take it first, Dottie?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, yes. Well, I feel, well, this is a really interesting question. I don't, Adam, Jessica, you want us to know. But yeah, because well, definitely in writing this book, in the book, the Shining that I just wrote, it was more like in characters than maybe I've ever written poems before, because I usually think about writing in the character of the I, and thinking about the persona, in that kind of traditional sense, as like a mask that has many facets, has many faces. And so that's sort of like that lyric I is kind of how I've always written poems. But I think there was some sense, like with this, especially thinking about the character Wendy in The Shining, that there is maybe kind of like a channeling, or kind of, connecting to her. So, but I would still say, given your question, that it's still more the words come to me. Yeah, then it's a process to stay in the character or theme. But like I wish that I had a process to stay in that character or theme, like I just kind of just did. I did after I wrote the book. I always try to accumulate Shining paraphernalia, but I did wear like a Shining rug scarf. And I did try to dress like her for a long time after I finished the book, which, she has amazing outfits, but like the classic, 80s red turtleneck and, red tights, that was something I tried to do to get into Wendy's character. But the poem's already done, but I was, summoning the spirit for the book to be blessed with her.
You're like a method writer, Dottie. That's great.
Yes, yeah, I'm a frustrated actress that, yeah, that would be so fun to really get into a character.
I love that.
How about you, Adam?
That is a really interesting question. I think the book itself, it took really like 13 years to put it together finally. It took a long time. And part of that was learning to listen to the book rather than telling the book what it was. And so a big process in this for me was going back into poems and kind of just tearing them apart and breaking them into pieces and kind of seeing how those fragments would then resonate with each other. Because I had all the poems written, but standalone the poems were working fine, but they didn't have like a cohesion. And so it was kind of this weird retrofitting where I had to go into the book and just take the poems apart so that I could then get this kind of narrative arc to go across it. And it wasn't until I started breaking the poems down, I realized that I was just writing continually about like these abandoned places and ghosts and the kind of apocalyptic landscapes that were the result of the subprime mortgage crisis and things like that. So yeah, that was kind of my process there with the book.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Jessica?
I ended up writing this book by accident between two other books. And I started reading biographies at night because I thought it would help me fall asleep if I stopped reading novels and poetry at night. So I thought it'd be a little drier. And I read this biography by Charlotte Gordon, which was a dual biography between the mother, Wollstonecraft, and the daughter. And it was so beautifully put together. And it was so stimulating that I started writing these poems. And I don't know, I don't feel like it's a character thing for me, although I didn't feel like there's definitely a part that's talking to the dead where I feel that time doesn't matter, that I feel like I do enter that world and that I imagine it. But I think I got so saturated with the details of her life, but mainly it was the idea of monstrosity, being the monster, creating the monster, being a monstrous to your mother, that you actually kill your mother. And I think I actually overwrote. This book I wrote so many poems that I just had to throw out because I got so caught up with the details of her life that I lost a little bit of the lyric, and then I had to wade through that and pare it down. So it began in the character. It began in the character, like entering her world, but it ended up with the language, and I had to reject things that were so interesting and fascinating. And there's so many. She has a marvelous life, Shelley. I mean, so much pain. I think that was another thing that drew me in. Was, 3 of her 4 children died, and it's just this enormous amount of pain before she was even 24. And how she managed that and still created, in the idea of creation. But I had to wade through all of that language and then get rid of it to return to the lyric. So I feel like I was sort of swimming in all of these facts about her life, but I didn't keep them in the book. So I feel like, to answer the question, that I did end in language and lyric. That's where I wanted to end up. So it was kind of a meandering answer, but.
No, it's so fascinating to hear poets' process. And some poets don't want to talk about their process, but I always ask, and if they refuse, it's fine. But I'm just so fascinated by it. We only have about 5 minutes left, so if no one else has any questions, I'm just going to ask one. Oh, did somebody put something in there? Oh no, everybody is just amazing, amazing answers. Healing in horror. Thank you so much, poets. Thank you, Jader, for joining us. I was gonna just ask, do you in particular have any any particular horror books that you would recommend to us that you've enjoyed reading? Either it doesn't have to be poetry, it could be another genre too. I'm just curious what sort of horror books you particularly enjoy.
Hmm.
Well, I just read Victor Laval's The Changeling, and there's a TV show for that, and it was so fantastic. It was so great. So I would totally recommend that. And then somebody just recommended this book by Stephen King, Dolores Claiborne. So I bought it. So I don't know if it's good, but I'm just shout out to that.
I love Stephen King. I think my favorite, don't laugh at me, but it's Pet Cemetery. I love that book. I'm obsessed with that. My favorite horror personally though is Thomas Harris's books, Hannibal
Oh,
Lecter books. I'm
yeah,
obsessed with those.
yeah.
It's like my go-to. I read them at least once a year and I rewatch the movies as well. I'm obsessed with that character. I find him I seriously find him one of the best characters in literature. And people laugh at me when I say that, but I think he's just fascinating. What about you, Adam?
I had a huge Thomas Harris phase. Like, I think when I first started college, I read it, Red Dragon, I think is brilliant. That's such a good book. And Silence of the Lambs too, obviously. But this may get me thrown out of the meeting immediately right now. I've never actually read any Stephen King. I've seen every Stephen King movie, but I've never read Stephen King. So I need to now go read Dolores Claiborne on Dottie's suggestion here. But there's a really slim novel by Stuart Onan called A Prayer for the Dying that's written entirely in the second person, and it's set in post-Civil War Wisconsin during a diphtheria outbreak and also a forest fire that's coming in. And it's one of the most horrifying books I think I've ever read, mainly because Stuart Onan is just a genius writer, and he never writes in the same genre twice. Everything he does is just completely different from the former. But it's a little bit like Lolita in the way that you don't realize the depravity of the main character almost because of the language until it's too late, and then you're just trapped in this nightmare of a book. So that I think is probably one of the most horrific things I've read. Good horrific, I guess I would say, in a long time.
Cool. Thank you so much. How about you, Jessica?
So I have to confess that horror, I think it's when I was little, my brother made me watch The Exorcist, the movie. And I was haunted by it for at least 20 years. And I did read Stephen King like one summer where I couldn't find any books. I was stuck somewhere and there were no books but Stephen King. And I read all these Stephen King novels and I remember like just being traumatized. So I'm a total wimp. So the closest I get to horror is probably like the Grimm fairy tales. Like those are, I guess, the horror of the domestic realm is where I can, which is sort of what Yours Creature is in a way. It's the horror of the domestic realm. And then I like real life witch stuff like Joan of Arc's transcripts at her trial. For some reason, I do better with real horror. And I don't know what that's about. So now I'm curious about that in myself. That imaginary horror is hard for me to in fact, my kids make fun of me because I can watch so little. I have to, like, they think it's amusing, but
We'll have to unpack that offline. It's interesting. Okay, well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know it's Friday night and you probably have other things to do. So I want to thank everyone for being here. And I want to remind everyone that this series is typically the first Thursday of each month. So for December, we have 3 very special readers. We're going to have Jas Winter Bolina and Leslie Sines and Pantia Tofingus. So it's going to be an amazing trio again, and I'll be posting that once the link is available. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for being here and spending your Friday night with you. It was such a pleasure. Again, Dottie, Adam, Jessica, thank you. I'm so grateful for you and your time. And I wish you all a very great night. And I have to end by saying, be well, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you, Adam and Jessica and everyone here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're all a delight. It was just wonderful. Have a
Yes.
beautiful weekend.
Yeah,
Nicole,
have a great weekend.
Nicole, thank you for including me. It was so much fun.
Back to Miami again, Jessica. I love dancing. We are doing it. Okay.
Well, I loved Miami, and I didn't, when you mentioned the book fair to Adam, I didn't know you could apply to those things. I'm so dumb. So I'm going to apply to that. I didn't know. I just thought you had to wait and get an invitation, but you can apply to these things.
Let me stop recording so I can tell you the real deal. Hang on a second.
I was